Here is the news.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And that's all for now.
There was the news. There it is, nearly all the time. Choose the right television channel and you can get the news at 12:45, 1 o'clock, 5 past 5, 20 to 6, quarter to 6, 7, 7:30, 9, 10 or 11. And a few local bulletins in between. But what is the news? What do you think it is? Today we're going to look at news programmes and the other ways in which the television networks try to show us what's really going on in the world in which we live. So what about the news? Is a news bulletin telling us the most important things happening in the country or even in the world on a particular day? Seems a fair enough starting point, what most of us generally expect to get when we switch on a news bulletin. But was this one of the most important events on Friday, February the 25th?
Finally, in the Gloucestershire countryside, the exceptionally wet weather is having an unusual effect on some sheep. They're sprouting grass on their backs. They don't seem any less frisky despite their extra burden. Their owner, Mr. Joe Henson, thinks that seeds from hayricks fell into their fleeces and then started to germinate because of the exceptionally wet weather. But he's sure that a spell of dry weather will kill off this extra area of pasture and that the sheep will go back to letting the grass grow only under their feet.
Very jolly. But there were only 18 stories in that news bulletin. Was that even the 18th most important event of that day? It doesn't seem likely, does it? It was put there because it seemed odd or amusing, put there to entertain us. So the news programmes, especially the ones that last quarter or half an hour, don't just lump together the most important political events, industrial strikes, price increases, big crimes, even sports results. They can include things that even the people involved wouldn't think were amongst the most important events in Britain, but help make the news more entertaining. In any case, who decides what's important? A train crash on the other side of the world is certainly tragic for those involved. But how do you decide to include it in the news and have to leave out something that's less dramatic but might affect how much we have to spend? Or why should a particular murder trial be reported? Is the news selected partly to seem exciting? Well, questions like this and the problems behind them apply to everyone involved in gathering news and passing it on to an audience. Not just television news people, but radio and newspapers too. Newspapers, of course, have to make the news sell. But television news has special problems of its own. So let's take a closer look at some of them. Time is one of them. Compared with most newspapers, even a 25-minute news bulletin has room for relatively few stories and can only go into much detail on 2 or 3 of them. But the main problem of television news, oddly enough, is also its big advantage: pictures. There's no denying that our awareness of events can gain a new dimension when we can see them happening. It does help just to see what people or places look like. We feel that if we can see what the reporter's talking about, we can also see what he means. Television gives us that in our own homes, and over the last 20 years has got ever quicker at doing it. We see the President of America as he takes office. We see the Cod War conflict between the British fleet and Icelandic patrols. We see the surface of the moon as the spacemen see it.
On the moon one day, in a merry month of December. Now, May.
We see our political leaders in action instead of just being told what they said. But pictures also bring problems. They take up time. So if the editor of a news bulletin decides the film is interesting for what it shows, he knows some other item has to be left out. But what if the pictures are very dramatic, but the story itself is not so important as far as the whole country is concerned? The temptation is to use the pictures for their excitement, even though they don't add much to our knowledge. Over the past few years, some people working in television news have come to realise that this is one of their biggest problems, going much deeper than whether or not you show a building on fire. First, there was the violence in Northern Ireland. In 1976, a government minister told the BBC he thought they should stop reporting the terrorism because that encouraged it. There were protests when that story got out. But for a long time, both BBC and ITV had been very careful about how much they actually showed the results, because of the danger that the whole Ulster situation would be seen only in terms of wrecked buildings and patches of dried blood. But there are difficulties even nearer home, and they're summed up in a word that's become increasingly familiar: demonstrations. Demonstrations, mass meetings, marches have always been part of our political life. You could say they show our right to free speech in action. The arrival of newspapers meant that if they were reported, their impact was increased. But it took television to bring them almost first-hand to millions of people beyond those taking part or happening to be along the route. This one was one of the most important for television, perhaps a turning point. On October the 27th, 1968, perhaps 50,000 people marched through London to protest against the war in Vietnam. A minority of them broke away and went to the American embassy in Grosvenor Square, where a minority of them got involved in a battle with the police. It was a Sunday afternoon and there was live television coverage of the march and much reporting afterwards. But later there was much criticism of the way television and newspapers concentrated on the violent minority. As for the political message of the peaceful marchers, that was mostly forgotten. So what's television to do? Gradually we've come to see that showing the pictures isn't enough. And events were changing to provide pictures for television. People with grievances held demos to get on TV. People broke up demos to get on TV. When football fans cause trouble, it sometimes seems they're just performing for the cameras. But actual violence is the extreme case. At election time, the political parties have realised that by giving press conferences in London early every day, they stand a better chance of being reported on television than if they hope for the cameras to follow them around the country. So, there are important areas in which television's picture power gives it headaches. After all, if they decide not to cover demonstrations and speeches, real grievances and ideas might go unreported. Well, those are the sorts of problem they have to take seriously. But I sometimes wonder how seriously we take the news. I imagine you all know who this is.
Uganda has ordered a close watch on the several
Angela
hundred
Rippon
Britons
has been a
and
news
Americans.
reporter herself. Now she's one of the BBC's newsreaders. That makes her a familiar face throughout the country. But it also seems to make her a celebrity. People want to know about the clothes she wears. She's invited onto the Morecambe and Wise Christmas show, and the newspapers compete for pictures of her legs. Not forgetting the Eurovision Song Contest. But it's not just Miss Rippon. The men too get fan mail, invitations to open fetes, make personal appearances. Well, if they enjoy that, fine. But it's worth asking what it says about the audience. If quite a lot of people watching the news are also looking at their favourite television star, can they be giving as much attention to the news itself? But once we start asking about our part in the process, things really get complicated. After all, the extent to which we really understand a news bulletin must vary, if only because we all have different interests, know more or less about different things. We don't all remember the same things about people. Try your own check. Choose a news bulletin and see what you each remember afterwards. Some people think more time should be given to explanation. Perhaps we could do with more sorts of news, some more complicated than others. You can already see that approach in the subtitled news for the hard of hearing, which has to be simpler to get the words in, or there's John Craven's News Round, which uses the full BBC reporting staff but explains events to a younger audience.
Today, the name of Vietnam is back in the news, 17 months after the civil war in that Far Eastern country came to an end. Now, Vietnam has applied to join the United Nations, the organization based in New York, to which more than 140 countries belong. One of the most powerful members of the United Nations is America, and their president, Mr. Ford, has said he won't let Vietnam join. And the reason? He thinks the communist government of Vietnam is being brutal and inhumane about the fate of many American soldiers.
Well, perhaps there are some lessons there for adults too. Time for the tricks of the trade spot. Well, a little bundle of tricks from the news and documentary side this week. For instance, had you ever noticed when someone's being interviewed how every so often you get a shot of the interviewer nodding with great interest? That's usually there just to let them cut a bit out of what the other chap's saying. But I'll let John Bird explain.
All of this whole thing has been blown up out of all proportion. As indeed, I'm glad to say, I'm the majority of my opponents.
Chief Labola, a lot of very nasty allegations have been made about your own role in the present conflict.
This is just the cutaway.
Who are the men behind you, the neo-colonial powers, and were these atrocities necessary?
Wonderful.
Well, that's just the cutaway.
Why has he not got the chief in the chair? He should be hitting him.
What do you mean hitting him? I mean, he's not there now. He's just doing his own questions on a cutaway.
Are you questioning my technical ability? I've spent 3 years on Bishop's Move. I know about
yes,
these things,
I've
but
got
why
it.
is he nodding his head up and down?
Well, because that's doing the noddies. You only got, look, you're out there on location. You've only got one camera, so he has to take the noddies separately. He's nodding. You know what I mean? You cut those things in later.
So they do the noddies afterwards, because they only have one camera pointed at the main subject. But Hunt the Camera is another interesting game. Have a look at this piece of film from Blue Peter.
Take the weight!
This is it?
Leslie Judd in a very risky exploit.
Yep.
But watch this. Someone else is on the rope now. She has no camera. So there's one camera crew down there and another one up here.
Slipping on my face.
All I had to do was to try and keep calm. But 10 metres below, the crew was struggling to keep my rope taut to stop me crashing back into the lighthouse. Mike needed all his skill and nerve to keep the heaving boat in position only just off the rocks. If I fell in here, I'd be smashed on the rocks just beneath the surf. Suddenly, I felt myself drop. I was more frightened than I've ever been in my life.
And the camera crew's got to get down too, which is where the shot on the rope came from. And never forget, as you see the polished performances night after night, that even the professionals don't always get things right, as Richard Wyatt of HTV discovered to his cost.
He couldn't have been more than about 30 feet above the head then. I'm writing the script as I go.
Richard Wyatt did survive, but even the famous don't get things right first time.
Now, despite the overwhelming... Sorry, I'll start again.
998, take one. Action.
But remember, that was 70 years ago. Can I do it again? It was a bit Every time a ship passes through...
Put a board on that one. Boarded.
Or the less famous. The compromise is to squeeze in these special programmes at odd times, mornings, weekends, and make people look out for them. If we thought it was important enough, we could open up a fourth channel and make more room. But who pays? Who pays anyway? This programme's come to you by courtesy of television, the art of the editor. Well, so far we've talked mostly about the news, about what counts as news on television, the need to get pictures, the possibility that the presence of television cameras can change or even cause the events themselves, the problem of explaining things in a short time. But there's another very big area of television's efforts to show us the real world. Documentary programmes can take more time, half an hour, even longer, to give us a fuller picture of just one subject. There's been a great tradition of documentary filmmaking ever since the movie camera was invented, and television carries it on. Any week you can find a whole range from politics and social issues on World in Action, Panorama this week, to science or natural history. And as people have got more used to television, it has been able to get ever closer to events. Sometimes, as in this film about a government department, the cameras can hang around so much that people almost forget them, and that gives us a rare inside view.
Well, now, let me then just tactically look at this for a moment. Whilst you may be right, if Geoffrey's at Cabinet and Sally wishes to press this very hard, we will not carry this in committee.
No.
Or we will not oppose
sure
it.
they will, too. No, I think this is, if I may just say so, I think this is a growing and very serious problem. The West Sussex Consumer Protection chap who runs their show there said to me that one of the areas where it's really serious is imported consumer durables and cars. And the whole problem of servicing and spare parts there is a growing problem in Sussex.
Yes, but that's what competition is about. And if somebody is foolish enough to go and buy a used car, then why we should protect him and ensure that the thing is right or proper, or in my illustration by the rolls which goes wrong, I'm really not too worried about protecting the consumer.
But the last few years have seen one very important development. It's called the Dramatized documentary. Once an event's happened, there's not much a programme maker can do but show you where it happened. The event itself is gone. So directors have turned to drama. They recreate events using actors and scriptwriters. It's an approach that's already produced many fine programmes. For us, as viewers, it can certainly prove a fresh and vivid experience, hard to get with words alone. But it also gives us a new problem. These men are members of an IRA bomb squad. They've found London's Piccadilly too crowded to plant the bomb in their holdall, and they've panicked. When a London weekend television journalist obtained inside information on how an IRA bomb squad operated in London for 18 months, they made it into a script and got an experienced film director, Stephen Frears, to shoot it using these actors. This is how we could then see the way one bomb went off in spite of the gang.
We defused it, waited a while, and made it up then.
The people that use that place are the people we are after, not people in the street. They've got nothing to do with it.
The people who use the Ritz are MPs.
The people who use us? Exactly, but these people aren't using the Ritz.
Then some guy in the next toilet looked in over the toilet to see what we were doing. He was a total stranger. We thought he'd seen us, so we ran out, threw it down at the bus stop and ran off. There were bolts in it.
We pulled the detonator out of it. I suppose still in the confined space of the bag, it still set it off.
The effect is vivid and the technique is clear. These were actors. But look at this. It's the beginning of one of the most noted recent documentaries, Johnny Go Home.
Euston, 9 p.m. Tommy Wiley, run away from home in Glasgow for the 3rd time, but new to London. Every day, 20 kids arrive at the mainline stations with nowhere to go. Unbelievably, there are probably 25,000 homeless youngsters in London. And for Tommy, there's only one barrier left.
Its report of the young boys who ran away from home to London and how they had to live caused a big public reaction. But this too was in part the truth recreated. Tommy, the boy at the centre, was a genuine runaway, but here he was acting out his past for the cameras. Inside television, there were people who thought that mixing the styles is dangerous. How do we know it's not the real thing?
Concourse of the station, report of a young boy approximately 12 years.
Are you travelling anywhere, love?
No.
What are you doing here then? You waiting for somebody?
No, I just arrived from Glasgow.
And what are you doing down here? Somebody meeting you?
No.
I've concentrated in this programme on some problem areas of television's reporting. The people in television know them. It makes sense that we should and realise better what sorts of truth we're seeing. But television journalism has many strengths. Reporters and cameramen who take risks to bring us things we would otherwise not know. Here are 2 examples from many. First, interviews with Russians critical of their government. They were filmed in Moscow with tourist-type camera in a moving car for safety and smuggled out.
Be giving problems to the Soviet Union over the question of different peoples wishing to leave?
Well, as to problems of immigration, I know surely Jews, surely Germans, I know that many Lithuanians, surely Crimea Tatars, and even some Russians, Baptists, because of religious problems, are eager to immigrate.
How many Jews would leave Russia if they were allowed to go?
What we know for sure, that already, except those 100,000 Jews who left already, at least 100,000 Jews decided to immigrate and ask for invitations, but they're afraid to use them because of the persecutions and intimidations to which they are subjected.
And it was this report by Jonathan Dimbleby that in 1974 finally made the world believe there was a tragedy in Ethiopia.
In this month of October, thousands are still starving. Thousands are still dying. This Ethiopian famine, unknown until now, is certainly the worst the world has experienced since Biafra. It could even be worse than that. These people are now without hope. They've seen mothers and fathers and sons and daughters weaken and die. Now, family by family, they await the same end.
Within a few weeks, Britons had raised £1.5 million to help these people. Within months, the world had added another 10 million after they'd seen the pictures.